The cycle continues, and the government won't stop it. This is why you should never drive Highway 67.
Before we get into this one, if you're into real stories from federal law enforcement, the cases that don't get solved, the patterns we're not supposed to talk about, the files that stay open for decades, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if you want more FBI field stories. And seriously, comment below where you're watching from and what time is it there. I'm curious who's listening to this. Now, what I'm about to tell you happened in West Texas in 1995, and it's the reason I transferred out of the El Paso field office. Let's get into it. My name is Special Agent Robert Hayes, and for 15 years I worked violent crimes and organized crime cases out of the FBI's El Paso field office. I've investigated cartel murders, kidnappings, human trafficking operations across the Texas-Mexico border. I've seen things that would keep most people awake at night. But nothing prepared me for Highway 67. It started in August 1995 with what seemed like a routine missing persons case. A family of 3, Mark and Jennifer Collins, and their 12-year-old daughter Olivia, disappeared while driving from El Paso to Fort Worth. Their car was found abandoned on Highway 67, about 40 miles south of Marfa, in one of the most desolate stretches of West Texas desert you can imagine. Engine was still running. Keys in the ignition, purses and wallets inside. Cell phones on the seats. This was 1995, so cell phones were those big brick things, but the family had them. No signs of struggle. No blood. No indication of what happened to 3 people who simply vanished from a locked vehicle in the middle of the desert. Local sheriff, Tom Brennan, called it in as a possible abduction. Federal jurisdiction because it crossed state lines. The family was headed to Fort Worth. So it landed on my desk. I drove out to Marfa, met Sheriff Brennan at the scene. The car was still there, cordoned off, waiting for our forensics team. It was a Honda Accord, silver, maybe 5 years old. Completely ordinary except for the fact that it was sitting empty on a highway where the nearest town was 30 miles in either direction. "Any witnesses?" I asked Brennan. He shook his head. This stretch of 67, you might get 5, 6 vehicles an hour during the day, less at night. Nobody saw anything. Car was found by a state trooper on routine patrol around 6 a.m. Family checked out of their El Paso hotel at 8 a.m. the previous morning. Based on their planned route, they should have been through here around noon. So somewhere between noon and 6 a.m. the next morning, they disappeared. 18-hour window, I said. Could have been anywhere. Except their car is here, Brennan pointed out. Engine running, tank half full. They didn't run out of gas. They didn't have mechanical trouble. They just stopped and got out and vanished. I examined the car. He was right. No signs of mechanical failure. No flat tires. No overheating. The interior was clean, organized. A road atlas open on the passenger seat, showing their route. A bag of chips and 3 Coke cans in the cup holders. A CD case, the Counting Crows, which I remember because my daughter liked them too. Everything suggested a normal family trip interrupted by what? What makes 3 people abandon a running vehicle in the middle of nowhere? "Any tracks?" I asked. "Footprints leading away from the car?" "That's the strange part," Brennan said. He walked me around to the passenger side, pointed at the desert floor. No tracks, not a single footprint in any direction. It's like they floated away. The ground was hard-packed caliche, typical West Texas soil. Not great for holding prints, but you'd still expect to see something. Scuff marks, disturbances, anything. But the area around the car was pristine. No evidence anyone had walked away from the vehicle. "What about tire tracks?" I asked. "Another vehicle?" "Nothing fresh." We checked 100 yards in every direction. This car drove here and stopped. Nobody else was around. Our forensics team arrived that afternoon. They processed the car, took samples, dusted for prints, found exactly what you'd expect. The family's prints all over the interior and nobody else's. No foreign DNA. No trace evidence suggesting anyone else had been in the vehicle. The lab ran tests on the soil around the car, looking for chemical residues that might indicate drugs or accelerants. Nothing. Ran tests on the car's computer system. This was a 91 model, so it had basic diagnostics. Everything showed normal operation. The car had simply been driven to this spot and stopped. I started reviewing the family's background. Mark Collins, 38, accountant. Jennifer Collins, 36, elementary school teacher. Olivia Collins, 12, honor roll student. No enemies. No financial troubles. No history of mental illness or drug use. No reason to stage a disappearance. They were exactly what they appeared to be. A normal family taking a normal road trip. The case should have been straightforward. Family abducted by person or persons unknown, either for ransom, though no ransom demand ever came, or as victims of a random crime. We'd work the case, follow leads, eventually find something. But then Sheriff Brennan showed me something that changed everything. 3 days into the investigation, Brennan drove me to his office in Marfa. Small building, maybe 4 rooms total, serving a county of 2,000 people. His office was cramped, filled with filing cabinets and boxes of old case files. "I need to show you something," and he said. He pulled out a file cabinet drawer marked Open Cases Amissi. Inside were folders, dozens of them, each one a missing persons case from Highway 67. "How many?" I asked. 47, Brennan said. Going back 30 years. All of them disappeared on the same 60-mile stretch of Highway 67 between Marfa and Presidio, all of them under circumstances similar to the Collins family. Abandoned vehicles, no signs of struggle, no witnesses, no bodies ever found. I stared at him. 47 people disappeared on one stretch of highway and nobody connected them? "They weren't all my cases," Brennan said. "I've been sheriff here for 12 years. In that time, I've had 6 disappearances. Before me, it was Sheriff Wade, and before him, Sheriff Martinez. Each of them had cases, but nobody put it all together until about 5 years ago when I started going through old files. That's when I realized we had a pattern." He spread the files across his desk. I started going through them. 1965. 2 hunters, abandoned truck. 1967. Solo driver, abandoned sedan. 1970. Couple in their 60s, abandoned RV. 1973. Family of 4, abandoned station wagon. The pattern continued, roughly every 2 to 3 years. Sometimes a single person, sometimes families. Always on the same stretch of highway. Always the same circumstances. Vehicle found running or with keys present. No signs of struggle. Occupants vanished without a trace. "Did you report this to the FBI?" I asked. 3 years ago, Brennan said. Sent a full report to the El Paso field office. Got a letter back saying they'd reviewed the cases and found insufficient evidence of federal crimes. Said they were likely isolated incidents. People running away from debts, custody disputes, starting new lives. Told me to contact them if I had concrete evidence of abduction or foul play. I felt my jaw tighten. Someone in my office had dismissed this. Had looked at 47 disappearances on one stretch of highway and called them isolated incidents. "I need copies of all these files," I said. "Already made them," Brennan said, pointing to a box on the floor. "Everything I have. Case files, witness statements, vehicle reports. I knew when the Collins family disappeared that someone would finally listen." I spent the next week reviewing every file, looking for patterns, connections, anything that would explain why this particular stretch of highway seemed to swallow people whole. Geographic pattern was clear. Every disappearance occurred between mile marker 47 and mile marker 107 on Highway 67. 60 miles of desert highway running roughly parallel to the Rio Grande, about 20 to 30 miles north of the border. Temporal pattern was less clear, but definitely present. Disappearances occurred every 2 to 3 years, with a few exceptions. Never more than 3 years between incidents. The shortest gap was 8 months in 1982 to 1983. Demographics: no clear pattern. Young people, old people, families, solo travelers. Men and women in equal numbers. Different ethnicities, different economic backgrounds. The only common factor was that they were driving through this specific area. Time of day: most disappearances occurred during daylight hours, but not all. About 60% happened between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. The rest were spread throughout the night and early morning. I created a map, marked every disappearance location with a pin. When I stepped back and looked at the full picture, something became clear. The disappearances weren't random along the 60-mile stretch. They clustered. 3 specific locations accounted for nearly 80% of the cases. Mile marker 67 to 14 disappearances. Mile marker 83 to 21 disappearances. Mile marker 99 to 10 disappearances. Those 3 spots, each no more than a quarter-mile radius, had claimed 45 of the 47 missing persons. The Collins family car had been found at mile marker 83. I drove out to examine all 3 locations. Brought my partner, Agent Maria Santos, who'd been helping me review the files. Mile marker 67 was unremarkable. Flat desert, scrub brush, mountains visible in the distance. The highway ran straight for miles in both directions. Visibility was excellent. Nothing to hide behind, nowhere for someone to set up an ambush without being seen. "What are we looking for?" Maria asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Something that explains why people stop here, why they get out of their vehicles and disappear." We walked the area, examined the terrain, found nothing unusual. Just desert. Mile marker 83 was similar. Flat, open, visible for miles. The spot where the Collins car had been found was marked with evidence flags from our investigation. Standing there, looking at the empty highway stretching in both directions, I felt the strangeness of it. How do 3 people vanish from a spot where you can see for miles? Where there's nowhere to hide, no cover, no structures? Mile marker 99 was different. About a quarter-mile west of the highway, barely visible in the heat shimmer, was a structure, or what was left of one. An old building, maybe from the 1940s or 50s, collapsed and weathered. "What is that?" Maria asked. Sheriff Brennan had followed us out. "Old ranch house," he said. "Been abandoned since the 60s. Family that owned it moved to Marfa, left the place to rot." "Is it on any of the missing persons reports?" I asked. Brennan checked his notes. "Not specifically mentioned, but several of the abandoned vehicles were found within sight of it." We hiked across the desert to the structure. Got closer and realized it wasn't a ranch house. It was too big, too institutional. More like a small facility or compound. The main building was maybe 2,000 square feet, single-story, flat roof, partially collapsed. Concrete construction, which was unusual for a ranch house. Windows were boarded up or simply missing. A faded sign near what had been the front entrance read, "U.S. Geological Survey. Authorized personnel only. 1952. "This was a government facility," Maria said. "Looks like it," I said. "Sheriff, did you know about this?" "Knew there was an old building out here," Brennan said. "Didn't know it was USGS. What would they be doing out here in the 50s? I didn't answer, but I was thinking about Cold War-era programs, about weapons testing in the desert, about classified projects that nobody talked about anymore. We searched the building. Most of it was collapsed or filled with sand and debris. But in what had been the main room, we found something. Equipment. Old equipment, rusted and broken but clearly sophisticated for its time. Racks that had held electronics, heavy cables running into the floor, and in the center of the room, a concrete pad with bolt holes, like something large and heavy had been mounted there and later removed. They were monitoring something, Maria said. Or transmitting. This was some kind of research station. I photographed everything. Took GPS coordinates, made notes of the equipment serial numbers I could find. As we were leaving, I noticed something else. On the concrete floor near the entrance, barely visible under dust and sand, were words scratched into the concrete. "It opens every 947 days. Do not be here when it does." Below that, a date, July 3rd, 1954. "What the hell does that mean?" Brennan asked. I did quick math in my head. 947 days is roughly 2.6 years. The disappearances happened every 2 to 3 years. "I think," I said slowly, "someone at this facility discovered something. Some phenomenon that occurs on this stretch of highway every 947 days. And they knew it was dangerous enough to warn people about it." "Warn people about what?" Maria asked. I looked out at the desert, at Highway 67 shimmering in the heat, at the spot where 21 people had vanished over the course of 30 years. "I don't know," I said, "but I think we need to find out when the next opening is." Back at Brennan's office, I did the calculations. If the pattern was truly consistent, if disappearances occurred every 947 days, the last disappearance was the Collins family on August 14th, 1995. 947 days before that was January 10th, 1993. I checked Brennan's files. A solo driver, truck found abandoned at mile marker 83. 947 days before that was April 8th, 1990. Couple in their 50s, car found abandoned at mile marker 67. The pattern held. Going back 30 years, almost every disappearance occurred within a few days of the 947-day cycle. The few exceptions were within weeks of the cycle date, probably people who were in the wrong place close enough to the opening. "So, when's the next one?" Brennan asked. I counted forward 947 days from August 14th, 1995. "February 28th, 1998, I said. "Whatever this is, it's going to happen again in 2.5 years. "And in the meantime," Maria asked. "In the meantime, we figure out what it is. We find out what that USGS facility was doing. We find out what opens every 947 days on Highway 67. Sheriff Brennan arranged the meeting with Helen Sullivan for the following week. She lived in a small adobe house on the outskirts of Marfa, the kind of place that had been there since the 1940s and looked like it hadn't changed much since. She answered the door herself, a tiny woman, maybe 5 feet tall, bent with age, but with eyes that were sharp and assessing. She looked at me, at my FBI credentials, and her expression hardened. "I knew someone would come eventually," she said. "Took longer than I expected. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm Special Agent—" "I know who you are," she interrupted. "Tom Brennan called me. Said you wanted to talk about Raymond, about the facility, about what he found out there in the desert." "Yes, ma'am. If you're willing to—" "I'm not," she said. "But I will anyway. Because 47 people have disappeared, and you have no idea what you're dealing with. So, come in, sit down, and listen. Her living room was neat, spare, decorated with photos from the 1940s and 50s. A wedding photo showed a young Helen with a handsome man in a suit. Raymond Sullivan, I assumed. Another photo showed Raymond in field gear standing in front of the USGS facility, smiling. Helen saw me looking at it. That was taken in May 1952, 2 weeks after the facility opened. He was so excited. Thought he was going to revolutionize our understanding of geology, of physics. Thought he'd found something that would change everything. What did he find? I asked. She sat down slowly, gestured for me to sit across from her. You have to understand the context. It was 1952, middle of the Cold War. The government was studying everything: nuclear weapons, radar, magnetics, anything that might give us an advantage over the Soviets. Raymond was a geophysicist, one of the best. The USGS recruited him to study magnetic anomalies in West Texas. There were reports of compass malfunctions, unusual radio interference, vehicles experiencing electrical problems in that area. They wanted to know why. And did he find out? Maria asked. Helen nodded. Within 3 months, he'd mapped the anomaly. It wasn't constant. It came and went on a specific cycle. Every 947 days, magnetic readings would spike dramatically in 3 specific locations along Highway 67. The spikes would last for about 6 hours, then fade completely. What was causing it? I asked. That's what Raymond tried to figure out. He set up monitoring equipment, brought in additional researchers. In July 1952, during the next cycle event, they observed it directly. And what they saw... She paused, seemed to be gathering her courage. They saw the air open, she finally said. Raymond described it as watching reality tear itself apart. A vertical line appeared in the desert, perfectly straight, about 10 feet tall, and then the line widened into a gap, like a doorway. Beyond the gap was somewhere else. Not desert, not Texas, somewhere else entirely. I glanced at Maria. Her expression was carefully neutral, but I could tell she was thinking the same thing I was. This sounded impossible, delusional. But Helen Sullivan didn't look delusional. She looked scared. Mrs. Sullivan, I said carefully. What you're describing sounds like insanity? She interrupted. I know how it sounds. I've had 70 years to question whether Raymond was lying to me, whether he'd lost his mind, whether I imagined the things he told me. But I didn't imagine the photographs. I didn't imagine the equipment readings. And I didn't imagine what happened to the research team. What happened to them? Maria asked. They tried to study it. Set up cameras, sensors, monitoring equipment aimed at the opening. During the July 1952 event, they documented everything. The opening appeared at exactly the predicted time, mile marker 83, lasting for 6 hours and 17 minutes. The team took hundreds of photographs, thousands of measurements, and 2 of the researchers, they went through. Through the opening, I said. Helen nodded. Against Raymond's direct orders. 2 young scientists, barely out of graduate school. They wanted to see what was on the other side, so when the opening appeared, they walked through it. Raymond tried to stop them, but they were already gone. What happened to them? They came back about 4 hours later. Walked back through the opening just before it closed, but they were changed. They couldn't speak coherently, couldn't explain where they'd been. Kept saying the same phrases over and over. Not our place, not our time. We shouldn't be there. They were hospitalized, diagnosed with severe psychological trauma. Neither of them ever recovered. Both died in psychiatric facilities within 5 years. I felt cold, despite the desert heat coming through the windows. And your husband? Raymond Sullivan? Helen's hands trembled slightly. He continued the research. Documented 3 more cycle events: September 1954, May 1957, January 1960. Each time the opening appeared, exactly 947 days apart. Each time it lasted about 6 hours. Each time it appeared in one of 3 locations: mile markers 67, 83, or 99. Those were the 3 locations where most disappearances had occurred. Did anyone else go through? Maria asked. Not intentionally. But during the September 1954 event, a family was driving through. Raymond had set up warning signs, had arranged for the highway to be closed during the cycle periods. But the family ignored the detour. They drove straight through mile marker 83 while the opening was active. Their car, it went through. Raymond saw it happen. One moment the car was on the highway, the next it was gone, disappeared into the opening. Did it come back? I asked. Helen shook her head. The opening closed 6 hours later. The car never returned. Raymond filed a report with the USGS, with the Defense Department, told them the phenomenon was too dangerous, that people were going to die if they didn't shut down the highway during cycle events. You know what they did? What? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They classified everything, sealed all the research, closed the facility, told Raymond if he ever spoke about what he'd discovered, he'd be charged with revealing state secrets. They couldn't explain the phenomenon, couldn't control it, couldn't stop it, so they buried it, pretended it didn't exist. But your husband kept records, I said. Kept evidence. He did. Against direct orders, he maintained his own files. Photographs, measurements, calculations. He knew someone would need them eventually. He knew the openings would keep occurring every 947 days, and people would keep disappearing. He wanted there to be a record, wanted someone to be able to warn people. Where are those files now? Maria asked. Helen stood slowly, walked to a bookshelf, pulled out a box that had clearly been waiting there for decades, set it on the coffee table between us. Everything Raymond documented, every photograph, every measurement, every calculation, it's all here. He made me promise to keep it safe, to give it to someone who could use it to save lives. So, here. Take it. Do what Raymond couldn't do. Warn people. Stop them from disappearing. I opened the box. Inside were dozens of folders, photographs, handwritten notes, the documentation of a phenomenon that officially didn't exist. Mrs. Sullivan, I said, why didn't you come forward before? Why wait until now? I tried, she said quietly. After Raymond died in 1961, I went to the authorities, showed them Raymond's evidence, told them about the cycle, about the openings, about the people who'd disappeared. You know what they did? They confiscated everything, took all of Raymond's files, all his research, told me if I spoke about it again, I'd be committed to a psychiatric facility, said I was experiencing grief-induced delusions. But you kept copies, Maria said. Raymond kept copies. Hidden copies. He knew they'd take the official files, so he made duplicates of everything, hid them here in the house. And he made me promise, if anyone else disappeared, if the pattern continued, I was to give these files to someone who could stop it. I looked through the photographs, black and white images from the 1950s, showing exactly what Helen had described. A vertical line of light in the desert, the line widening into a gap. Beyond the gap, something that wasn't desert. Glimpses of structures, of landscape that didn't match West Texas. "What is it?" I asked. "Where does the opening lead?" "Raymond had theories," Helen said. "He thought it might be a dimensional fold, a place where our reality touches another reality, or a time displacement, the same location but in a different time period. He never had enough data to be certain. But whatever it is, it's not meant for us, and people who go through don't come back the same, if they come back at all." I spent the next month analyzing Raymond Sullivan's files. The documentation was meticulous, precise. Temperature readings, magnetic field measurements, photographic evidence. All of it pointed to the same conclusion. Something impossible was occurring on Highway 67 every 947 days. I tried to brief my superiors at the FBI, showed them the evidence, explained the pattern, made the case that we needed to investigate further. The response was swift and definitive: stand down. The matter had been reviewed by a classified security committee. All evidence related to Highway 67 anomalies was to be turned over immediately. I was to cease all investigation and return to regular duties. When I refused, when I said I couldn't let more people disappear, they gave me a choice: drop the investigation or face disciplinary action for interfering with classified defense research. "This isn't defense research," I said. "This is a cover-up of a phenomenon that's been killing people for 40 years. The deaths are regrettable," my supervisor said, "but the phenomenon is classified at the highest levels. You don't have clearance for this information. You don't have authorization to investigate it. Turn over all files and evidence or you'll be suspended." I turned over the official files. The photographs, the measurements from the USGS facility, everything I'd collected through official channels. But I didn't turn over my personal notes. And I didn't turn over the extra copy of Raymond Sullivan's files that Maria had made before the FBI confiscated the originals. If the government wasn't going to stop people from disappearing, I would. Sheriff Brennan and I developed a plan. We couldn't prevent the openings. We had no idea how they worked or what caused them. But we could warn people, keep them away from the 3 danger zones during cycle events. We calculated the next opening date, February 28, 1998, about 2 years away. Starting 6 months before that date, we'd increase patrols on Highway 67. Set up temporary road closures during the predicted 6-hour window. Make up reasons: road maintenance, hazardous materials transport, anything to keep civilian traffic away from mile markers 67, 83, and 99 during the critical period. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than doing nothing. "What if the government stops us?" Brennan asked. "Then we go public," I said. "Release Raymond Sullivan's files to the media. Let the public know that people are disappearing and the government is covering it up." "They'll destroy our credibility," Maria said. "Call us conspiracy theorists. Dismiss the evidence as faked." "Maybe," I said. "But at least people will be warned. At least they'll have a chance to avoid those areas during the danger periods." We shook hands on it. An FBI agent, a sheriff, and a DEA agent who had no official reason to be involved but couldn't walk away. 3 people against a government cover-up that had been running since 1952. In December 1995, something changed. I got a call from an unknown number. A man's voice, careful and measured. "Agent Hayes, we need to meet. I have information about Highway 67. "Who is this?" I asked. "Someone who worked on Project Threshold. I can explain what the openings are and where they lead, but we need to meet in person, alone. They're watching me and they're watching you. If you have information, you can come to the FBI office. No official locations, no recordings. If they know I'm talking to you, we're both dead. There's a diner in Van Horn, tomorrow at noon. Come alone or I won't show." He hung up before I could respond. I should have reported the call, should have followed protocol, brought backup, done everything by the book. Instead, I drove to Van Horn alone. The diner was half empty when I arrived. An old man sitting in a back booth waved me over. He was maybe 70, thin and weathered, with the look of someone who'd spent years carrying a heavy secret. "Agent Hayes," he said. "Thank you for coming. My name is Dr. James Peterson. I was part of the research team at the Highway 67 facility. I was there when we discovered what the openings really are. I thought all the researchers were dead or in psychiatric facilities," I said. "Most are. I survived by keeping my mouth shut, accepted the government's version of events, signed the non-disclosure agreements, went on to a quiet career in academia. But I've been following the disappearances. I know about the Collins family. I know you've been investigating. And I know you're running out of time. Time before what? Before the next opening. But that's not what I mean. Agent Hayes, the cycle is accelerating. The 947-day period used to be precise, consistent. But in the last decade, it's been shortening. The last 3 openings have occurred 938 days apart, then 932 days, then 927 days. The cycle is collapsing." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the boundary between our reality and the other place. It's breaking down. The openings are happening more frequently, lasting longer. In Raymond Sullivan's time, they lasted 6 hours. The most recent opening, the one that took the Collins family, it lasted for 8 hours, and the next one." "How long will the next one last?" I asked. Dr. Peterson's hands were shaking. "If the pattern continues, approximately 12 hours. Maybe longer, and the openings might not close completely anymore. The barrier between realities might be failing permanently." "What's on the other side?" I demanded. "Where do the missing people go?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Nowhere." "They don't go anywhere, Agent Hayes. They go nowhere. That's the horror of it. The openings don't lead to another place. They lead to absence, to void, to a space between realities where nothing exists. Raymond Sullivan was wrong about it being another dimension or time period. It's worse than that. It's nothing. Pure nothing. And when people walk through those openings, they cease to exist. Not dead, not alive, just gone, erased from reality." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "How do you know this?" "Because I went through," Dr. Peterson said. "During the September 1954 event, I stepped through the opening for just a few seconds, long enough to see, long enough to understand. Agent Hayes, there's nothing on the other side. No light, no dark, no up or down, no time, no space, just absence. And once you're in that absence, you can't find your way back. The opening might still be there, but you can't perceive it because perception doesn't exist in that void." The 2 researchers who came back, they were lucky. They fell back through the opening by pure chance before it closed. But the 47 people who disappeared, they're still in there. Still existing but not existing. Trapped in nothing forever. "Then we have to close it," I said. "We have to find a way to seal the openings permanently." "There is no way," Dr. Peterson said. "We tried. Every method we could think of. The openings aren't caused by anything we can control. They're natural phenomena, like hurricanes or earthquakes. The only thing we can do is warn people to stay away." "The government won't let us do that." "I know. That's why I'm risking everything to tell you this. Because the next opening is coming sooner than you calculated. My measurements show it won't be February 1998. It'll be December 1997. About 2 years from now. And when it happens, If the degradation continues, it might not close. Highway 67 might become a permanent gateway to nowhere. Everyone who drives through will disappear. Not 47 people over 30 years. Thousands of people every year. He slid a folder across the table. This is everything I've kept. All my calculations, all my measurements. Use it to save whoever you can. Because I can't help you anymore. They know I'm talking to someone. They'll be coming for me soon. I just hope I've given you enough information to make a difference. He stood up, looked at me one last time. Don't try to fight them, Agent Hayes. The people covering this up have resources you can't imagine. They've been protecting this secret for 40 years. They'll protect it for 40 more. Just focus on saving lives. That's all that matters now. He walked out of the diner. I never saw him again. 2 weeks later, I read in the newspaper that Dr. James Peterson had died in a car accident on I-10 near Van Horn. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses. The article said he'd fallen asleep at the wheel. I knew better. Dr. Peterson's calculations were precise. December 17, 1997. The next opening would occur at mile marker 83 beginning at 10:47 a.m. and lasting approximately 12 hours. We had 2 years to prepare. 2 years to find a way to save lives without getting shut down by the government. Sheriff Brennan started quietly placing warning signs along Highway 67. Not official signs. Nothing that would draw federal attention. Just handmade markers at each of the 3 dangerous locations. Extreme hazard area. Avoid between December 16th to 18th, 1997. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maria and I continued investigating through unofficial channels. Talked to families of the disappeared. Looked for any pattern we'd missed, any detail that might help us understand the phenomenon better. In March 1996, I got a call from Helen Sullivan. She was dying. Pancreatic cancer. Doctors gave her 6 months. She wanted to see me one more time. I drove to Marfa, sat with her in her living room. She looked frail, diminished by illness, but her eyes were still sharp. "I'm not going to live to see the next opening," she said. "That's probably a mercy. But before I die, I need to tell you something Raymond never wrote down. Something he only told me." "What is it?" I asked. "The openings can be closed," she said. "Temporarily. Not permanently. The phenomenon will keep recurring every cycle, but an individual opening can be sealed before its time is up. Raymond figured it out in 1954, right before the government shut down the project." My pulse quickened. "How?" "The openings are tears in reality, caused by opposing magnetic fields. When our reality and the void space come into alignment, the fields cancel each other out, creating the gap. Raymond theorized that if you could generate a strong enough magnetic field of your own, one that matched the natural field of our reality, you could reinforce the boundary, force it to close." "What kind of equipment would that take?" I asked. "That's the problem." In 1954, Raymond calculated that you'd need a magnetic field generator powerful enough to create at least 50 Tesla across a 10-meter area. That kind of equipment didn't exist then, might not exist now. But if you could build it, if you could position it near an opening when it occurs, you could close it early. Save anyone who's still on our side of the gap. "Did Raymond try this?" I asked. "He started to." That's what he was working on in July 1954, right before he died. He'd requisitioned some equipment, was building a prototype generator, but the government found out what he was doing. Shut him down. Confiscated his equipment. 3 weeks later, he was dead. They called it an accident, but I know better. Raymond was killed because he'd found a way to close the openings, and someone didn't want that knowledge getting out. Why would anyone want to keep the openings open? I asked. Why would the government cover up a way to save lives? Helen's expression was bitter. Because they were studying it. Using it. Raymond suspected that the Defense Department was interested in the void for military applications. If they could figure out how to control the openings, how to send people or things through and retrieve them, it would be the ultimate weapon. Perfect disposal method. No evidence, no bodies, no questions. Just make your problems disappear into nothing. I felt sick. They were using Highway 67 as a testing ground. I don't know for certain. Raymond didn't have proof. But why else would they work so hard to keep it secret? Why else would they let people keep disappearing rather than close the highway? Agent Hayes, I think the 47 people who vanished weren't just victims of a natural phenomenon. Some of them might have been deliberately sent through. Test subjects. The government learning how to weaponize absence. She died 3 weeks later. I attended her funeral. There were maybe 8 people there. A woman who'd spent 70 years carrying her husband's secret gone and forgotten, her warnings unheeded. But she'd given me the key. A way to close the openings, I just had to build the equipment. I spent the next year researching magnetic field generators. Reached out to physics professors, engineering firms, anyone who might help without asking too many questions. The equipment I needed didn't exist commercially, but I found a physicist at UT Austin who thought he could build a prototype. It would take time and money, a lot of money, more than I had. That's when something unexpected happened. Maria had connections in the DEA's Asset Forfeiture Division. Drug money seized from cartels, held in escrow. She could redirect funds for equipment purchases related to ongoing operations. We pooled resources. Cash from seized assets, my savings, contributions from Sheriff Brennan. By October 1997, we had enough. The physicist delivered the magnetic field generator to a storage facility outside Marfa. It was massive, 2 tons of equipment, requiring a generator truck to power it. But according to the physicist's calculations, it could produce 60 Tesla across a 12-meter area, enough to close an opening, if the theory was correct. If Raymond Sullivan's calculations from 1954 were accurate, if we could get the equipment in place and operational before the opening consumed anyone else. A lot of ifs. December 16, 1997, the day before the predicted opening. Brennan set up roadblocks on Highway 67, diverting traffic around the danger zone. We told people there was hazardous material cleanup, gas leak detection, utility work, any excuse to keep them away. Maria and I positioned the magnetic field generator 100 yards from mile marker 83. Ran power cables from a diesel generator. Tested the equipment. Everything checked out. "What if it doesn't work?" Maria asked. "Then we witness another disappearance," I said, "and we learn something for next time." "There shouldn't be a next time," she said. "This should end here." I didn't tell her what Helen Sullivan had suspected about military applications. Didn't tell her that even if we successfully closed this opening, the government might not let us close future ones. Some truths were too heavy to share. We waited through the night. At dawn on December 17th, federal vehicles started arriving. 3 black SUVs. Men in suits with credentials from the Defense Intelligence Agency. They wanted to know what we were doing, why we'd closed the highway, what the equipment was for. I showed them my FBI badge, told them we were investigating a potential terrorist threat. Standard interagency cooperation. They didn't believe me, but they couldn't stop us either. We had legal authority to close the highway for investigation purposes. They'd need a federal judge to override that, and it was 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. No judge was going to issue an emergency order without more information. "You're interfering with classified defense research," one of the DIA agents said. I'm preventing civilian casualties, I replied. If you have a problem with that, take it up with my superiors. He made a phone call, walked away for a private conversation. When he came back, his expression was grim. We've been ordered to observe only, for now. But Agent Hayes, you're making powerful enemies. I'd suggest you reconsider your course of action. Noted, I said. At 10:30 a.m., we activated the magnetic field generator. The equipment hummed to life, drawing massive amounts of power from the diesel generator. The air around mile marker 83 began to shimmer. Is it supposed to do that? Brennan asked. I don't know, I admitted. We're in uncharted territory here. At 10:47 a.m., exactly as Dr. Peterson had calculated, the opening appeared. It started as a vertical line, maybe half an inch wide, perfectly straight, about 10 feet tall, hanging in the air above the highway like a crack in a window pane. Then the crack widened. The line became a gap. 1 foot wide, 2 feet, 3 feet. I could see through it, see the void beyond, not black, not white, just nothing. Absence of color, absence of form, absence of everything. Looking at it made my eyes hurt, made my brain try to reject what it was seeing. Turn on the generator, I shouted. Maria activated the magnetic field at full power. The shimmer in the air intensified. The opening slowed its expansion, stopped at 4 feet wide. But it didn't close. Increase power, I said. We're already at maximum, Maria replied. The opening held steady. 4 feet wide, perfectly stable. The magnetic field was preventing it from expanding but wasn't strong enough to force it closed. Then a car appeared on the highway. Despite our roadblocks, despite our detour signs, a vehicle was approaching mile marker 83. An old pickup truck, maybe from the 1980s, driving slowly along the empty highway. How did they get through? Brennan said. Doesn't matter, I said. We need to stop them. Brennan ran toward the truck, waving his arms. But the truck kept coming. I could see the driver now, an elderly man, maybe 70, looking confused by all the equipment and people. The truck was 50 yards from the opening, 40 yards, 30. The DIA agents were getting out of their vehicles, watching. Not helping, just watching. 20 yards. The old man saw the opening, slammed on his brakes. The truck skidded, trying to stop, but momentum carried it forward. 10 yards. The truck hit the opening. I expected it to go through, to disappear into the void like the 47 people before. But something different happened. The truck passed through, but it didn't disappear. It emerged on the other side, on the opposite edge of the gap. Like driving through an open door. The old man was screaming, hands locked on the steering wheel, but he was still there, still visible. The magnetic field was creating a stable opening, not closing it, but preventing anything from being erased, creating a passage instead of a trap. The truck came to a stop 20 yards past the opening. The old man jumped out, looking back at the gap in horror, then ran. Brennan caught him, guided him away from the danger zone. But the opening was still there. 4 feet wide, perfectly stable, showing nothing but void beyond. And then, from within that void, something moved. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The void, by definition, was empty. There couldn't be anything in there to move. But I saw it again. A shape. A figure. No, not one figure. Multiple figures. Emerging from the nothing, becoming visible as they approached the opening. People. The missing people. I saw the Collins family first. Mark, Jennifer, and 12-year-old Olivia. They looked exactly as they had 2 years ago. Hadn't aged, hadn't changed. They were walking toward the opening, toward our reality, drawn by the same magnetic field that was holding it open. Behind them, more people emerged from the void. A couple in their 50s. I recognized them from the 1990 case file. 2 hunters with rifles. The 1965 disappearance. A family of 4 in 1970s clothing. More and more, all 47 missing persons walking out of nowhere. "What's happening?" Maria asked. "The magnetic field," I said. "It's not just holding the opening. It's creating a path, giving them a way back." The Collins family reached the opening first. Mark Collins stepped through, then Jennifer, then Olivia. They looked around in confusion, blinking in the sunlight like people waking from a long sleep. "Where are we?" Mark Collins asked. "We were driving. We stopped. There was something in the road." "You're safe," I said. "You're back." The others followed. 47 people emerging from 2 to 30 years of being trapped in nothing. Some collapsed immediately, some screamed, some just stood there trying to process what had happened to them. The DIA agents were recording everything, not intervening, not helping, just documenting. Then something else emerged from the void. Not a person. Something else. Something that had existed in that absence, that had perhaps caused the absence, that had been waiting for someone to open a stable doorway. It was hard to look at directly. My eyes kept sliding away from it. But I caught glimpses. Too many limbs, too many angles, geometry that shouldn't exist in 3 dimensions. It was large, maybe 15 feet tall, and it was moving toward the opening. "Turn off the magnetic field," I shouted. "But the people," Maria started. "All the people are through. Turn it off now." Maria killed the power. The magnetic field collapsed. The opening began to close immediately, shrinking from 4 feet to 3 feet to 2 feet. The thing from the void reached the opening. One of its impossible limbs extended through, reaching into our reality. The opening closed on it. There was a sound like reality tearing, a flash of light that left spots in my vision. When I could see again, the opening was gone. And so was the thing that had tried to come through. But lying on the highway, severed by the closing of the gap, was part of its limb. About 3 feet long, covered in something that looked like scales but moved like liquid, pulsing with colors that didn't have names. One of the DIA agents immediately retrieved it, placed it in a containment case. "That's government property," he said. "That's evidence of something that almost killed us," I replied. "Call it what you want." "It's coming with us." I wanted to argue, but 47 people were standing on the highway in various states of shock and trauma. They needed medical attention. They needed help. That was more important than arguing with DIA agents. The aftermath took months to sort out. The returned people were quarantined and questioned extensively. Most of them remembered nothing after entering the void. Just a sense of timelessness, of floating in absence. Olivia Collins, the 12-year-old girl, described it as being asleep, but knowing you're asleep and not being able to wake up. Medical examinations showed no signs of aging. 2 years or 30 years, they'd all been preserved in the void, existing but not living. Their last memory before the void was their last moment of existence. The government handled it quietly, told the media that the missing persons had been found alive in a human trafficking operation, rescued by a joint FBI-DEA task force, gave everyone a cover story, promised them counseling and financial compensation if they never spoke about what really happened. Most of them agreed. What else could they do? Who would believe them? I was transferred out of the El Paso field office, promoted to a desk job in Washington, where I could be watched. Maria was reassigned to Miami. Sheriff Brennan retired quietly. The magnetic field generator was confiscated by the Defense Intelligence Agency. classified as experimental equipment related to ongoing operations. And Highway 67 remained open. 3 months after the December 1997 event, I received an unmarked envelope at my Washington office. Inside was a single page of typed text. Project Threshold. Status Report. January 1998. December 17th event confirms Sullivan hypothesis regarding magnetic field closure. 47 test subjects successfully retrieved from void space. Technology now exists to create controlled entry/exit points. Recommend continued research into military applications. Highway 67 corridor to remain operational for future studies. Next cycle event predicted, October 2000. Monitoring protocols in place. Test subjects. They called them test subjects. 47 people who'd been accidentally trapped in the void over 30 years. And the government was calling them test subjects. Which meant they knew, had always known, had been studying the phenomenon, documenting it, learning from it, and they had no intention of stopping it. I retired from the FBI in 1999, moved back to Texas. Not to Marfa, I couldn't go back there. But close enough, I still monitor Highway 67, still watch for patterns, for disappearances. The cycle continues just as Dr. Peterson warned. But now it happens every 927 days, not 947. The accelerating collapse continues. October 2000 came and went. 3 people disappeared near mile marker 99. Their cars were found abandoned, engines running. I tried to warn them, put up signs, contacted local authorities, did everything I could without official resources. It wasn't enough. It's never enough. The last I heard, the interval between openings was down to 912 days, getting shorter with each cycle. Eventually, the openings will become permanent. Highway 67 will become a permanent gateway to nowhere, and the government will keep studying it, keep sacrificing people to understand how to weaponize absence. I'm 68 now. I've lived with this knowledge for 26 years. Lived with the weight of 47 people I saved and dozens more I couldn't. If you're reading this, if you're watching this, I have one request. Don't drive through West Texas on Highway 67 between mile markers 47 and 107, especially not on dates that fall approximately 910 days apart. The government won't warn you. They won't close the highway. They won't do anything to stop the disappearances because they're learning from them. So I'm warning you instead. There's a stretch of Highway 67 where reality tears itself apart every 2.5 years, where people step through into nothing and cease to exist. The openings are getting more frequent, lasting longer. Someday soon, they might not close at all. And when that happens, when Highway 67 becomes a permanent gateway to the void, no one will be able to save you. So stay away. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell anyone who'll listen. Some roads shouldn't be traveled. Some highways lead nowhere. And on Highway 67 in West Texas, nowhere is exactly where you'll end up.